Maybe you know the moment you do something with an organization and you consider yourself a client or a customer, so they should consider you a client or a customer as well. But somehow you feel misunderstood, or you think they do not understand you at all. Because maybe you ended up in a random call center. Maybe you had to tell your whole customer story again because once more the customer representative completely changed in due course of a couple of weeks, maybe for the third time in this year, this month, or this week. And you're standing there and think, how is it possible that so many organizations are unable or unwilling to properly know their customers? Why do so many organizations do not know their customers anymore? And I'm referencing here, of course, that we, of course, have, by the way, we will have a great guest here who will tell you how to know your target audience. I can tell you the interview guest we have on the show this week is someone who achieved something which is so extraordinary that I promise you, you most likely will not meet someone like him ever again in your life. So it really pays off to stay until the end. But first, let's take a look. Why do so many organizations not know their customers? Let's face it, we had a couple of appearances and a couple of occurrences, a couple of incidents last week where you could see that some organizations do well with knowing their customers and their target audiences better, and some do not do that well. So let's, for example, look at certain cases which we saw just last week. We had the European Super League, which came up into the news and now is abandoned completely. They now admitted that they had years and years of planning to get this European Super League. By the way, for the ones who do not watch football, in the next 30 seconds, we will go through this topic. And the Super League, the whole idea was that a couple of clubs, of course the wealthy ones, the big clubs, 12 to 15 clubs, play together against each other in the European Super League, cross-country league. Of course, not a league with FIFA and UEFA, completely and privately run by another organization. And of course, as people on this level often are, they didn't talk to anyone, as it seems, because even Jürgen Klopp, who was and is the manager of the Liverpool Football Club, when he was asked in an interview what he thinks about the European Super League, he says, "What's that? I don't know anything about it." And it turned out that club owners didn't even know about the idea and this project. Even the managers were not told by the club owners that this is going to be a part of their job. This compares to, just imagine you work in an organization and senior leadership or even board level people do not have any communicated strategy. You just work along and you have no idea what the strategy of your organization is. Does this sound familiar? Yes, because we often have moments like that in free enterprise or in different other organizations today where people simply do not know what actually is the strategy. Where do we develop this organization? And we had more fails where senior leaders simply thought they do something and they don't have to tell anyone. Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak are accused of giving tax breaks to Mr. Dyson, who went away with millions or probably billions of British pounds. Some people called it government by WhatsApp, which of course is not legal and also not allowed. Dominic Cummings again plays a significant role here. He denies that he is the source of the leaks, but let's face it, when you work together with someone like Dominic Cummings, you should be prepared that things might go south as soon as you kick someone out and make them leave. I don't want to say that Dominic Cummings is the source of the leaks. However, somewhere these leaks must come from. Facebook again has a massive scandal, and they now found out that the Facebook job ads exclude women. So you can exclude women, by the way, without looking at their qualification, which is straightforward illegal. This was published in the MIT Technology Review on the 23rd of April in 2021. So this is an official source, scientifically credited, scientifically proven evidence delivered. Look at your target audience. Does Facebook want to work with women? I think they do. So maybe not a wise choice to offer these options or even put them in practice. And of course, depending on the country where people access Facebook, it might be or it will be illegal. And in most countries where laws against discrimination are in place, this is illegal. Of course, sometimes you have good examples for communication. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris now officially made the statement that they say that the murder of Armenians in Turkey was a genocide. That is an extremely important statement, because only reflecting on history gives your country the opportunity to learn from it. And of course, the United States has many problems which they have to work on. But admitting and officially making a statement that they consider this a genocide. Of course, Turkey wasn't happy, but who's surprised about that when you look at Mr. Erdogan running the country? Only when you reflect on the history of your country, you can learn from it and grow to be better in the future. By the way, when we talk about Facebook, English football clubs are boycotting Facebook. Not only Facebook, but also Twitter and other social media networks like Instagram, because these networks do not do enough against hate. When you go on, for example, LinkedIn today, hate speech arrived on LinkedIn a month ago during the pandemic. You have people who lie about the pandemic, people who do not want to wear masks. And these are business people who, on their business account with an organization's name attached to it, make these statements. Legally, they have the right to do so as long as they don't cross the line of hate speech. But hate speech at the moment is omnipresent. As some people of you might know, I came out at the age of 19, and ever since I was an outspoken activist for the LGBT community, especially in the business world. Receiving hate mails is something which I now have every single week. Some I send to the police, some I do not, because they're just too irrelevant, too anonymous, or just not enough to follow up. So it is now the time, and here you see that football clubs know about their target audience when it comes to this case. Football clubs know that sports and hate do not go together. So it is good that they boycott social media networks this weekend, because a lot of traffic is driven from sports towards social media networks, which means that these social media networks will have a rather quiet weekend when it comes to sports. And the English Premier League is the most important and the most profitable, also the one with the highest revenue in the whole football, and I mean soccer for our American listeners, the most profitable football league globally. So let's see if Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. will change due to that. Good news as well from the Oscars, the Academy Awards, which I saw live. Of course, I have to as a professional speaker. As someone who professionally delivers training, coaching, you have to look at moments where important speeches might be given. And the Academy Awards were a lot better. They were a lot more diverse, also a lot more relaxed. They are not that overly rehearsed. And of course, due to the pandemic, the situation was quite challenging, but I think they did well. Of course, I'm not an expert for film, so I can't comment if they did the right or the wrong decision, if they picked the right films and actors, because I'm not an actor, I'm not a film expert. And you know what you do when you're not an expert on something? You listen to experts and you listen to what they say. I cannot judge if the right movie was chosen. I can tell you that Nomadland, personally, from my personal taste, is an excellent choice for the awards they won. But that's all I can tell you. Seeing that Hollywood slowly but steadily seems to learn that they have an outreach which comes with an accountability towards diverse communities, towards representation of women and minorities, is an important statement which we desperately needed, especially during times of the pandemic. So how is it possible that some organizations are able to learn and others do not? And I can tell you why. And I'm referencing here Frank Kaspidis. So this is not my opinion what's coming now. This is Frank Kaspidis, who is working for Harvard Business School. He just published a new book. He already had one bestseller, which is called Aligning Strategy and Sales. And his new book, Sales Management That Works, is now just published. And I saw him speaking live just last week with an excellent presentation, an excellent speech. So when we talk about why do so many companies have either an inefficient way, and I am German, as you know, so inefficiency is something that really grinds my gears, although nothing really can grind German gears because it's German engineering and it's perfect. Sorry, I had to do that. Really, I know it's a cheap pun, but I really had to do it. So talking about why do so many organizations not know who are their customers? Problem number one, and of course we look into the problem and then we will look into how to do it better. Problem number one is there is no representation of customers and clients on senior leadership or board level. When you look into board levels, and this is what someone has done, and Frank Kaspidis, as I mentioned him before, did exactly that. So this is not an opinion which you hear right now. This is scientific research, proof, and evidence. If you look into board level people, most board level people today have a background either in finance or in business administration or in engineering. And all of these positions are important. No question about that. Of course, you need people who are able to master the numbers. You must have people who are able to run a business properly. And you must have people, especially when you have a product which is designed by engineers. And let's face it, most products are designed by engineers in one way or the other. You need representation of engineers. This is blindingly obvious. So when you say engineering is important, so we have an engineer on the board. Numbers are important, so we have someone with a financial background on board. Running the business is important, so we have someone with a business background on board. When I now say, are customers important? Are clients and customers important? You most likely will say yes, and then I look on the board, and there's no one. That does not make any sense, but that's exactly part of the problem Frank Kaspidis here is addressing. There is no representation of customers or clients on board level or even on the highest senior leadership management area or executive area. And the reason for that often is quite simple. People don't want to spend any more money on it. People say sales is expensive anyway, and they have high commissions and high salaries. Yes, they do, because it's a tough job. If you think that salespeople are overpaid, here are the news. Apply for a sales job and just get the money by yourself. But of course, many people don't want to because they know how challenging a sales job can be. And by the way, if you're just envious about someone else's salary, you are actually not really the person who should be in a leadership position, because envy is a really bad motivation when you are leading any department or any group of people in any organization. So as long as you have no representation of clients and customers on board level or senior executive, senior leader management area, then of course we come to problem number 2 is many organizations do not have any structured approach on how to get the records about customer representation or customer comments, customer communication together. Many organizations do not have any proper CRM system, or when they have a CRM system, it's so complicated that no one of your sales force is using it for a very good reason. They have their own Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word files because it is much easier to work with them rather than with a CRM system that is not running properly. Some examples of CRM system I saw in practice were appalling. Some people sat down with the client and then said, oh, I can't look into the pictures we made with you of the product because I need an internet connection. And without internet connection, I can't see any pictures because we only link them. Or they say, I can't look into your emails we wrote back and forth because, I don't have internet access and the CRM only works when we have internet access. So obviously no one thought through how are we going to use the CRM system? In what kind of circumstances are we able to do so? I can tell you from my local pub, when someone from Coca-Cola comes in, and that is the perfect example of how to do it well. I'm normally there normally during the early evening hours, sometimes in the afternoon when I have a day off or something. Someone from Coca-Cola comes in. I often think it's not the greatest salesperson because they miss out on revenue. It's a bit more, for me, it's a bit too much order taking, but that's not the topic here. I look at it from a CRM perspective. The person has an iPad in their hand, ask about the order. Of course, in the pub, especially when in that corner, there is hardly any internet access because it's somewhere hidden back in the office. And even when they don't have internet connection, they have a CRM system which works offline, takes the order, and then as soon as you have internet connection again, then it simply synchronizes the data. And that's how a good CRM system works, because obviously people looked into how are we going to work with that system in practice. And of course, most likely some salesman on site might have said, look, sometimes I'm standing with a pub owner somewhere in a cellar 10, 15, 20 meters underground. There is no mobile or Wi-Fi signal there, and it still has to work. And then they purchase a system that is able to serve that need. So be sure when you do not have a CRM system, or the CRM system is either not fit for use or fit for purpose, then you have to admit that you need to change something, because that is part of the problem. And aspect number 3 is often your sales force, as soon as they have issues, they are there alone. Of course, management by exception as a principle is generally a good idea, but when you tell people reach that profit goal per year and you tell them it's your job how to do it, we help you, but the rest of the task is just with you. That is good, because you allow them to have freedom of decision, to get their own time management, and generally you have a good approach. But as soon as they ask for help, when there is no help available, because people say, oh, sorry, the system is as it is. Or they say, it's all with the IT. I don't know what they're doing. Just accept it how it is. Or when someone says, we have a product idea, how a product should change, then you should, of course, be open for that. But often people hear, look, this is all board level stuff, and I really can't be bothered. Just do your sales job. So this is the third part of the problem. When people need help, there is no one there to help, although you promise to offer help. You simply do not follow up on your promises, which is, of course, not great. And of course, you can do something about that. So, for example, I watched Frank Gaspides from Harvard Business School give a speech, and of course, you can hire people to speak at your events as well, or you can get training sessions, coaching sessions, which is often very helpful. Consultants can help you with, or mentors with a mentoring project. You can help your sales force to become better, or interims and project managers might help you as well. And I'm happy to talk about that with you. But let's focus on how can we do better, because I always promise in every podcast here, how are we able to do it better? Of course, your sales force is more than just order taking, because when it's just order taking, they actually missed out on what they should do. It's not called order taking, it's called sales, which means you sell something. And the first moment when sales begins is when someone says no. That's where you see if someone's a good salesperson or not. So let's look into how can we do it better. Aspect number 1, you need a CRM. And the CRM, very simple, is it's structured, simple, and goal-oriented. That's what your CRM should be. If you have a CRM in place which is not structured, simple, and goal-oriented, get a new CRM or update your CRM in a way that it meets these criteria. Because as soon as the criteria you have, all these criteria have to be met, because otherwise salespeople will find a way around it. I can promise you, as soon as you have an idea how to make your system safe and you say, oh, salespeople can't do X, Y, Z, give the software to a salesperson. And the best idea you could do is you say, for example, $1,000 for the person who still finds a workaround how to do it. And then you find out if your system is as safe as it is. Salespeople are known in the whole organization to find any gap in the software, which you have not thought of. So your CRM system really must be fit for use and fit for purpose. If your system isn't properly in place, you can have the greatest processes, the greatest team, the greatest management, the greatest leadership. Nothing of that is going to work. Because when the foundation isn't there, it's like building a house without having concrete below it. You of course can build a house with simply saying, hey, here's a meadow, or here's a bit of sand. Let's just build a house there. Yeah, good luck with trying. And what you really need to focus on is, after the CRM system is in place, is that automation is good, but automation is not going to replace the human contact. I give you an example of how a mobile service provider, the one I use, did it well. They have automation, and I used their automated services a couple of times and they work brilliantly well. But now I had a wish that I wanted to change one particular aspect, quite special, quite unique, of my contract, especially for the moment when travel is going to resume, which might happen in probably 3, 4, 5, 6 months time. At least I assume that it will. And I had to talk to someone. So I went to their support chat. Of course, there's an artificial intelligence. I put the question in there and the system didn't really get what I asked. So the system asked me something again. I gave a second answer. And then the system said, I am not sure if I really got your answer. Press 1 if you want to keep on chatting with me. Press 2 if you want to chat with a real person. So I pressed 2 and had a real person. Problem could be fixed within a couple of minutes. Or my idea that I had could be put in place within a couple of minutes. This is how to do automation properly. And I can tell you, many of your salespeople will be happy that a couple of tasks will be automated. When someone says, we have a change in the order, or someone says, we have a change in the email address, or we need a different invoicing address on the PDF you send us. Sales really should not deal with that, because it is a waste of time to put a well-paid senior salesperson on a job of changing the invoicing address in a PDF. That is not an efficient use of time. It's very important that salespeople appreciate automation as long as it is helpful, so they can free up time to focus on, and that's important now, to focus on doing more sales work. I'm still a big fan of working with goals. So as soon as people meet their profit goals, for example, I always tell them, you can of course now make more money and get more commission, or you can say, I just want to have time off. I'm fine with that. Don't force people to do more, because often that doesn't go down well. And especially do not correct their goals afterwards just because you think they have time left. Maybe you can talk with them if you have a certain idea, and when you present them with something where they say, oh, what's in it for me? Oh, that's in for me. That's in it for me. Then, of course, I will do that. But talk to them. Don't just do, I hereby command you to do X, Y, Z. So automation definitely is good. However, the personal contact will not be replaced by an artificial intelligence. Some people might now claim that customers will not be able to see if it is an artificial intelligence or not. When you look at how laws are developing, you can be reasonably sure that there will be a law which will make it obligatory that you have to label if it's an artificial intelligence or if it is a proper human being talking to you. Because when you look into deep fakes and all the problems coming with that, there will be a legal entity which says this is going to be the law, where you have to label this is a real person or this is a fake person, an artificial intelligence, for example. And the personal contact, and that is very important, you always have to tell your sales force that the personal contact is important, because otherwise they might become the biggest enemies of artificial intelligence and automation in your organization. Of course, you don't want to threaten people that they lose their jobs. I can tell you one thing, especially after the pandemic, sales jobs are more needed than ever, and that's also part of what Frank Kaspidis did during his research. The number of sales jobs worldwide is on the rise. Not since last year, not since the pandemic, for the last 20 years, constantly. More and more and more sales jobs are on the rise, and more sales jobs are needed, especially in free enterprise. So besides the fact that people always say IT skills should be taught from elementary school, in my opinion, and I was not a born salesperson, I was very against doing any kind of sales in the beginning of my career, until I realized that sales is not just being chatty and pushy and salesy and talking to people until they buy something they don't really need. That's not sales. That's just being pushy and annoying. Sales is to put an offer there and make people buy something which they didn't know about, but which has huge benefits for the customer, the client, the person or the organization you sell it to, and of course, a lot of benefits for you as well, including well-paid services, or a profit you can make out of selling the items or services you offer on the market. So as soon as you say, we have a CRM system, good. We have automation in place, good. But of course, the automation does not fully replace the personal contact, because the personal contact will never be replaced by any artificial kind of interaction. Then you have to look at the third aspect, and that is the toughest one for many organizations. Sales is a leadership task. And I want to refer an article here which was published in the Harvard Business Review, and the article is named "When CEO Do Sales Calls." And I know sometimes people think, oh God, please no, please no, please no. I mean well-trained CEOs, not a random CEO doing sales calls. More and more organizations need a voice of sales on board level. And that means that either board level or senior executive or senior management people, they need to do sales calls as well if they want or not. Just pushing them down the ladder to the technical or operational level and saying, oh, sorry, I am actually sales executive or sales manager, so I don't do phone calls or I don't do customer calls. That is old-fashioned sales. And according to Frank Kaspidis, you won't survive with your organization, because when you do not have any customer's voice on senior leadership, senior executive or board level, your organization will lose touch with your customer and client base, and someone else with an innovation will get on the market and outperform you quickly and take away your whole customer base within a very short amount of time. So when you want to do it better, step 1, CRM system, structured, easy, goal-oriented. Step number 2, automation is good, but it does not at all replace the personal contact. So focus on training your people well, coaching your people well. Use automation, but be sure that the human being is your most important asset still. And aspect number 3, sales is a leadership job as well, which means you have to do sales calls if you want or not. And please talk to your people before you just do it. Please get training and coaching, because otherwise you might cause harm which you didn't intend to do, but as soon as you put the harm in place, it's too late to recover from it. So of course, I also refer to the article. I highly recommend reading the Harvard Business Review article, When CEOs Do Sales Calls. And also I highly recommend the 2 books from Frank Kaspides, which is Aligning Strategy and Sales, and his newest book, Sales Management That Works. Both highly recommended. Even more highly recommended is the person we have now with us as an interview. And I can tell you this is a truly outstanding history. Just imagine that you lose your arm, because that's what happened to Stephen Robinson. Stephen Robinson lost his arm at a very young age, and he didn't lose it last year. It's not that I interview someone here who's 19 years old. He lost his arm at the age of 18, but in the 1970s, 1980s in the United Kingdom. And the social outlook back in the days when you had this kind of disability, and handicap was the most polite word people might have used back in the days, the social outlook was not great, especially not in the UK. Often there was no way to get into the working world, so you can imagine that life will be tough. But Stephen Robinson said he wants to be a pilot. And people said, you can't be a pilot, you only have one arm. So he got an engineering degree with distinction and invented the world's first arm for one-armed pilots. And he has a couple of other amazing achievements in his life. And he just recently published his book, which is called, I'm not making this up, his book is called No Arm in Trying. And I can tell you, you are going to meet someone right now who is an inspiration for many, most likely for generations. I saw him speak in London in front of a very challenging audience at Marble Arch, very seasoned professionals who are not easily impressed by achievements of other people. And I can tell you, this man has something to share we all need to know. And this is, well, welcome right now, Stephen Robinson. And first, of course, I have to thank you for the time. Thank you very much for listening to me up to this point. And let's get straight to the interview. Staying resilient in these days might be challenging, to say the least. The question is, how do you stay resilient? And actually, you know that there are a lot of resilience experts on the market, but who can really tell from their own experience and their own story how to stay resilient when a real crisis hits your life? And I'm very happy that I have an international expert with me today. Hello and welcome, international inspirational keynote speaker, and also awarded the British Empire Medal. Hello and welcome, Stephen Robinson.
Hello, Niels. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you very much. And let's get straight into the topic. Could you just briefly tell us, what is your story? Because I saw you speak in London, absolutely fascinating keynote. I mean, you saw the reaction, you got a standing ovation, which I think rarely happens in the UK. So well done you. Can you just briefly tell us, what is your story?
So my story starts, every story has a beginning, a middle and an end. And my beginning was in poverty and a violent father, and which went on to bullying at school. And it was just a dreadful life, really. And then I ended up with acne, and it was really bad, and the bullying increased with intensity. And my only escapism was a motorbike that a friend let me have a go on when I was 13, I think. And I ended up buying that motorbike. And that propelled me into a world of engineering and fun and adventure. Unfortunately, at the age of 18, I lost my right arm on that motorbike. And things you would think would start to get difficult then. But in actual fact, it was a major turning point in my life because of my bad acne that I had, and the fact that I was now in hospital and they'd given me so many antibiotics and drugs to keep infection at bay because I'd lost a right arm. It cleared all my acne. And I was so happy and overjoyed that my acne had gone. Losing a right arm didn't really seem that important. I mean, I guess it was, but I was young and I was resilient, and I was happy that I had no acne. And I saw this wonderful, great, bright future in front of me. I wasn't certain what that future would be. So I just did everything. And I did everything I thought I could try, and things I thought I might be interested in that, or I might like that, because of course I'd never trained as a one-handed guy. I didn't know what a one-handed guy could do. So the only way you can find out is by doing everything. So I did, and I found I was quite good at things that previously I'd not been good at. And I think maybe I just had a mindset change. My attitude had changed. Instead of just giving up when I couldn't do it, I realized that my whole life now would be a life of challenges, even tying my shoelaces and cutting my food and putting clothes on. So I realized every aspect of my life will now be a challenge, and I couldn't give up. And I had to fight on until I could master each and every challenge, which previously, I suppose, I didn't have to do that. But it was a godsend, really, because that's what propelled me into all the interesting things that I did, and which resulted in the successes that I had.
Absolutely amazing. And I know that you also are a qualified private pilot. Is that correct?
I am a qualified private pilot. And that was maybe, I embarked on that journey round about 2012.
Isn't there a legal barrier that they say you need to have two arms to be a qualified pilot? Isn't that like a legal necessity, which they normally will tell you?
Well, there are. But there's, it's like everything. When somebody puts an obstacle in front of your way, there's always a way around it. Sometimes you can't go through a specific door. So what you do is you go around it. So long as you're not breaking any laws, and when you get round the doors and go through the different hoops and jump the hurdles, you get to the same place. What does it matter which route you took, so long as at the end of it you can prove that you can do what is required of you for a pilot's license? So that's what happened to me, really. And I was awarded a flying scholarship for the disabled. And this was to build your confidence up if you had a bit of a bad or rough time being a disabled person. But I'd just been through 6 years of litigation, and I came out the other side suicidal. So I thought I'd take on this challenge. And the only problem with flight training is a prosthetic arm that was made for me by the NHS didn't work, and it failed dramatically at 3,500 feet, and it fell off to this arm. And we went into a spiral dive and dropped through a cloud. So I realized that I needed a different prosthetic arm. So I set myself about the task of making my own prosthetic arm, a DIY arm. And with that DIY arm, I could prove to the flying instructors that I could do the things that they said I had to do with two arms. Now, the aircraft I flew, or the one I still fly, has got a stick. So it hasn't got like a little steering wheel. It just has a stick in front of you, and you control everything via a stick. So the only other thing you need, if your hand is on the stick, is you need a hand on the throttle for adjusting power. So what I did is I connected my prosthetic arm to a body jacket that gives me strength in my torso. And then I connected the other end of it, the hand as it were, to the throttle, which is just a plunger. It's like the old choke activator in a car. You just push it in and pull it out. So I connected my prosthetic arm to that. So this meant that every movement of my body, pushing forwards and pulling back, adjusted the throttle in the aircraft, which now meant I could do the same as a two-handed person. I had one hand on the stick controlling the aircraft, and my body and my shoulder just pushing forwards and backwards was controlling the throttle. So in actual fact, although they said you have to have two arms and you're not allowed to modify the aircraft, what I did is I went round that door. And what I did is I modified myself and created something that would do the same thing as my right arm would do, which was just operate the throttle. So when I proved that that would work and I could do it, then they said, oh, well, that's all that your right arm normally does. And I said, well, yeah. And they said, well, you're not allowed to fly with one arm, but you can do the same with a prosthetic arm as you can with two arms. So they had to give me my pilot's license because I proved I could do it. But
excellent.
It was like everything. There was a hurdle after a hurdle after a hurdle. And I just kept jumping over them. And I kept proving to people that I could do the things that they didn't think that I could do.
And I think you also received the Douglas Bader Memorial Trophy in 2015 for it, isn't it? Isn't that what you also got?
I did. I was awarded the Douglas Bader Memorial Trophy, and that was for my my contribution to disabled pilots. So I guess not only had I proved something to myself, but I'd proved something to all those other disabled people out there that potentially wanted to be a pilot as well, whether that be commercial or whether it just be for fun. But I proved at least that nothing was holding them back. I always feel that it's okay standing on a stage and saying to people, I can do this, or you can do this, and you can do that. But if you haven't done it yourself, how can we really quote to other people that it can be done? Surely we can only prove it can be done if we've done it and we've proved it. So I always think that if I'm going to tell people what they can do in life, before I tell somebody you can do this, if you put your mind to it, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to prove to myself, first of all, that I'm giving correct advice that it can be done. If I can't do it, I'm not going to go on stage and say it can be done. I'm only going to go and show people what can be done because I know it can be done through experience.
That is very impressive because, as we all know, you know that I am, maybe from my Northern German point of view, I am reasonably critical about motivational, inspirational speakers because many of them always say you can do anything you want. But when you look at their own CV, they haven't done any of what they say can all be done. They are only talking about it.
Exactly. And that's what, and I think when I go and I hear speakers speak at events and they say that, and then I think, but you haven't done it.
Yeah.
Then I'm totally not inspired. And, and the credibility for me, unfortunately, is zero because they haven't done it and they haven't proved to me. Where are the photographs? If somebody comes on and says, you can do tightrope walking across the Grand Canyon, anybody can do that. Okay, well, show me you doing it.
Yeah.
And if they show me that they can do it, then I'm going to believe they can do it and then that you can do it. But so
absolutely.
I think proving a point before you actually talk about it and try and convince other people about that point, you have to have done it yourself. You just have to. I can't go out and tell people you can fly an aircraft with one arm if I've never flown an aircraft with one arm because I don't know whether you can do it or not. It's just really, it's not a fact. It's more of what I think. It's just guesswork, and you can't teach guesswork. It's unfair to teach guesswork because it's not facts, and we have to teach facts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One question which I received a lot, because of course I prepared for this interview, and many people ask, when you see the obstacle, where do you get the optimism from? Because people often say, look, I had obstacles in my life. With the first one, I made it. Second one was okay. But I simply came to the point where I said, it's enough. And here I give up. Where do you have the energy from that you never gave up? Because I talked to a couple of people who had challenges and all of them, or most of them said, there was this point where you said, I just can't deal with it anymore. And here it goes downhill from there. So where do you get the energy, the optimism from to never give up?
I suppose because I've had so many setbacks and so many times where you think, oh, I can't do this. What am I going to do? That I realize that you can do it because what tends to happen is everybody hits a brick wall at some point and they think, well, I just can't get over it. And I just stopped trying to get over brick walls and I stopped competing with others and I started competing with myself. And I thought, right, this brick wall is in my way. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to chip away at it just a little bit each day, just a little bit. Not lots, because I can't even see the other side of the wall. There's no point me even trying to see over the wall. It's too tall. It's too big an obstacle. But I'll chip away at it just a little bit each day. And if I chip and I chip and I chip and I chip, and I might be chipping for years, but eventually I know I'm going to get through it. Or I'm going to go around it. I'm going to create a scenario where I can get around it. So there are lots of problems that people face and think they just can't see a way through. There's always a way through, Niels. The obstacle is seeing it, but there is a way and there is a route. It's just it's not always obvious to you. So you sometimes have to totally think outside of your normal thought pattern. And it's like if you've got some building needs done, you no way, how am I going to get this done? I can't find a decent builder. I've had 5 builders do it. They've all made a mess. I've been in this situation loads of times. What do? I'll go on the internet, I'll learn how to do it, and I'll do it myself. And it might take me a long time. I might struggle, but I'll do it.
Absolutely brilliant. And as far as I know, you've now written a book about it, which is called No Harm in Trying. So
yeah,
You didn't lose your sense of humor, obviously.
Well, in the sense of humor,
So,
in all honesty,
yeah,
I had a sense of humor before, but
yeah,
I can't help but see the funny side in situations. It's almost like a slapstick comedy where I was once sat on a bus and we went round a corner, and it was the early days of losing my right arm, and it went round the left corner, so I was falling to my right, and I just fell right into the middle of the corridor of the bus with everybody laughing at me, saying, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I put my right arm out to stop myself." I didn't even think for a minute to grab hold of something with my left arm because I'm not left-handed, I'm right-handed. And I put my right arm out to stop myself from falling, but there wasn't a right arm there. And I fell into the middle of the aisle of the bus. But it was so funny. It was, it was so funny that I couldn't help but laugh at myself and the situation. And lots of situations happen like that. And, you know, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at?
absolutely, absolutely. So, what is the book about? Tell us about the book.
So the book is about the beginning. So being brought up in poverty and a violent father, and all the hassle and the difficulty I went through, and all the obstacles as a young child, which you don't even realize you have them as a young child. You just live with what you've got, and you're happy that you've got a loving parent. In my case, and my sister's case, my mum. And then it goes on to tell the story of how horrific school was, then losing a right arm, and then how my life totally changes from losing a right arm. And I went on to do loads of different things. I was a one-handed motor mechanic. I was a break dancer. I got involved with jukeboxes and vintage one-arm bandits, and that's not a pun. You know, the old slot machines.
Yeah, of course I know them.
I was in America not so long since, and I said, speaking at a big event, and I said, a one-arm bandit. I said, I'm not sure you get that joke. And they said to me, one-arm bandit is an American terminology.
Exactly.
I didn't realise. So, and I got into one-arm bandits, and then I went into jukebox manufacture. Then I went to university. I went to night schools, which led to university. And I went to an access course to get me again into university, and I was awarded Student of the Year. And I've been a real poor student. I'm not clever at all, and I don't think I am. And then from that, I got a first-class honours degree in computer science.
Wow.
I developed and designed a digital jukebox that became £1 million seller. I sold, I sold 400 jukeboxes in the first 8 months, which turned over more than £1 million in 8 months. Then I ended up in litigation because a company stole my copyright. Then I had death threats. Then I was so suicidal and depressed that I applied for a flying scholarship. And then I got the flying scholarship. Then I was all over television. And then every program was inviting me on TV. Then I was awarded all the awards, the British Empire Medal, the Douglas Bader Memorial Trophy, the Yorkshire Inspirational Individual of the Year, which is my county. And it just went on and kept doing more TV. And that, of course, propelled me onto the stage of being a motivational speaker. And I've spoken all around the world doing that. And then, of course, I have to write all about it.
Excellent. I think you're a great example for many people who are now listening to this. So to round this interview up, when people are now listening to this and say, life is very challenging right now, a global pandemic, maybe some people lost their jobs, maybe some people lost their whole business. So what are Steve Robinson's top 3 tips, what people should do right now to get better out of the situation than they are now?
Well, first of all, don't view any of this as a negative. This could be the best thing that's ever happened to you. So you've got to realize that opportunities are everywhere, and opportunities don't always come dressed as opportunities. So you must recognize an opportunity. This is a perfect time. If you've been made redundant, if you've lost your job, whatever, and you've always fancied being self-employed, but you never take that plunge, this is your ideal time. So first of all, don't forget to look for opportunities. They are there. They just don't always come dressed as an opportunity. Also, don't forget that failure does not exist. Failure does not exist. 100%, I promise that. All you have are different degrees of success. So long as you try to do something, you might not be as successful as you want it to be, but you're one step closer to where you want to be. And how can that be viewed as failure? So success is all there is. It's just different degrees of success. Failure doesn't exist. And don't be afraid to ask. Because how did I get a flying scholarship? And the simple answer is I asked. Now, I know it sounds stupid, and I know it's a cliche, but if you don't ask, you don't get. And why? Because those people don't know that you want that in the first place. So when I go to a talk, at the end of my talk, I'll tell people this, and I'll say, for example, nobody's going to bring me a cup of tea after this talk because nobody knows I want one. But the fact is that now I've mentioned that I wanted a cup of tea, I always get a cup of tea at the end of the talk. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of anything.
Excellent.
Just imagine if you had no fears, what is it that you wouldn't do?
These are great final words for this interview, and I think you're an inspiration for many. I can only highly recommend to people to buy your book, and also because I saw you speak at an event, and let's face it, one thing I didn't mention, you were speaking in front of professional speakers. So each and every person in the room did exactly what you do. And this is a very tough audience, maybe the hardest audience you can ever face. And getting a standing ovation from there truly means that you are excellent. So I can only highly recommend to anyone to book you as a speaker for their event. So at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing for me left to say. Stephen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels, and thanks for the opportunity to speak at your podcast. I really enjoyed that. And it's great, as always, catching up with you.